These are the cards that are going to stand between you and a seat at Worlds at this upcoming NAWCQ.
Hold it! Hey guys, this is Tom Box. In the future, well, now that we're in the new set, you might see me change my hair and the background might change from time to time because I've already recorded that video previously. But for the most part, I've been doing some more testing. I wasn't satisfied with the original build, so I'm gonna do a new build, and this one's gonna include Necro Princess because I just think this is a really good card, and I didn't really highlight it in the previous one because I was a little bit more OCG focused at the time. But now that we have this card after testing, it's just really amazing. It just saves resources overall when it comes to weaker hands, and you can still build a full board. So because of the addition of this card, I had to alter my entire extra deck as well. So I might as well just re-record this whole thing. So welcome to your Fiend Smith Snake Eye combo tutorial fundamental deck profile, and hopefully you guys can kind of learn the basics from here and bridge out of it. I think you guys have tons to learn. The profile part we'll go through pretty quickly, except for the extra deck part, because I want to kind of talk about why the extra deck is so tight. So there's a little bit more inclusion there, but you know, I've listed a time code in the description. Also, it will probably be on the video as well. So thank you guys for watching, and let's get to it. To kick off the main deck, we have 3 Fiend Smith Engraver and 1 copy of Lord. That's the entire Fiend Smith package. Very powerful stuff you want to open with Engraver because it lines up both and bridges your Snake Eyes and your Fiend Smith combo, whether it be going into some of the extra deck cards. In fact, I think most of the discrepancies are within the extra deck. Which monster should you start with first? Is there a most optimal monster? I think that's going to be a bit of a rock, paper, scissors, and when we get to the extra deck, we'll talk a little bit more about it. And it really could depend on how you want your playstyle to be on this deck. So let's just move on from here. We can move quite quickly from like the Snake Eye stuff because we've seen Snake Eye deck lists time and time again. 3 Diabell Stars, nothing really changed there. Triple Ash, no change there. I mean, there's some of the best openers in the deck. Double Poplar and the Oak. And we have 2 copies of Flamberge and 1 copy of Diabell Star, Snake Eyes Diabell Star. I don't know if you need the second Flamberge anymore because you don't actually kind of combo into it as much. We're not playing the rank 8. I'm going to be straight up honest with you. You don't need it because even if you wanted to play the rank 8, why don't you just play Desiree instead? Desiree just does something that rank 8 essentially does, but maybe even better, and you can even prevent it from being targeted, and it's just as easy to summon. It does not require hard commitment, but we'll talk about that more in the extra deck. So that essentially is the entire main deck monster lineup. Let's go for the hand traps first. Starting off, I think we are going to go with Droll and Lockbird, triple Droll, because Fiendsmith start, which would mean that they have to do a search that could lock out the rest of the deck. So Droll does become a lot more powerful in the format, and highly recommend that you guys at least play 2 copies of it. Then there is triple Veiler, triple Ash, triple Imperm. Now, I can also recommend Nibiru. Right now, I'm currently siding Nibiru, but if you're going to be playing a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors, whether or not they are going to be able to Nibiru you, I think double hand trap with Nibiru still hurts a lot. I think it's still very powerful, but Nibiru by itself is not that great because it can quite easily get negated and get hand checked, and maybe you get run into a triple attack afterwards. So that's hand traps. Spell-wise, 1 copy of Fiend Smith Tract, and of course with the Necro Quip, let me just grab this. With this card here that now exists in TCG, you can essentially just bridge it quite freely, and this essentially turns into kind of a 1-card combo. I mean, you can combo this into a quite like a quick rank 6. I'm not sure if it pushes hard enough. There are ways that you can push it even further, but it really depends on whether or not you have space in your extract to play the M7. So 1 copy of Tract, and that also leads to 3 copies of Bonfire, 3 copies of Wanted, because these are just such a consistent deck. And then we have the Temple and the original Sinful Spoil Snake Eye, and there's definitely not going to be a ban list now, so that's part of the alteration in this profile. And we are playing triple attack. I am currently choosing to play Cross-Out Designator, expecting a lot of mirror matches, and you can probably shut off someone's Fiendsmith package along the way if you just activate Cross-Out on their card. I think there's just better options overall, but if you develop enough disruptions, Cross-Out Designator can do like a lot of damage and maybe prevent yourself from getting hit by a triple attack as well. So that's why I'm choosing to start with it for now. But before I jump into the actual extra deck, I want to talk about why the deck construction of the extra deck is so tight. Like, it's tighter than before. First of all, to play the Fiendsmith package, you're shoving in at least 5 cards. Requiem, Sequence, Lacrima, Moon of the Close Heaven, and Beatrice. Beatrice lets you bridge into your Snake Eye cards. So these are just very powerful, and of course the Moon of the Close Heaven lets you bridge any 2 monsters into the Fiendsmith package. But to shove in 5 cards in, you have to keep in mind of how you're building your Snake Eye extra deck as well. You have Promethean Princess in there, you've got a lot of link-based plays, but Promethean Princess puts you under a fire lock, so you need some fire monster to get out of that fire lock and still be able to OTK. Previously, of course, we always had both Access Code and, you know, Raging Phoenix and Zelantis. But some of that stuff, you know, starts to overlap, and now you have to cut something. And Raging Phoenix and Zelantis might be the ones to go because it requires both monsters to play. Whereas Access Code works a little bit as a solo monster that's quite easy to build. And if you need additional bodies, the Fiendsmith cards can provide you with the bodies as well. Sure, it means that your Access Code is not likely going to climb to like 53 as much, but a 43 access code with enough pops can still quite quickly get the OTK. So that's like another thing you can consider. But if you prefer to go for the Raging Phoenix play to unlock yourself and still go into Zelantis and you still find that you have the space to do so, then by all means just play what you feel comfortable with. But when it comes to these 3 monsters now, these are what I consider like kind of like the rock, paper, scissors scenario. So some people are choosing to go into Desiree, so when you go into the Fiendsmith package, you can quite easily climb into Appaloosa, DDD, Wave Hacking Caesar, and Fiendsmith Desiree. And this one offers you essentially a negate much akin to the Hot Red Dragon Abyss. And then this one is, of course, Appaloosa, and DDD, Wave Hacking Caesar is just like summon negation. And this is good going first or second. You can go for the Nibiru block. However, if you go for DDD, Wave Hacking Caesar, it's like kind of neat because there's different lines you can do where you go into the Sequence, you leave Sequence up because now you have a link to, and you make this card so that it's a little bit safer. Most people technically would still Nibiru you at some point when you get to the point where you can make an Appaloosa, but you would not have committed into any of your Snake Eye monsters yet, which makes it fantastic. And these two in some sense are very, very similar, but people are smart, they will pivot. You rather have Appaloosa because it just negates monster effects and it's just a lot more effective in that sense. Desiree, on the other hand, provides you with an Omni negate on any card, or multiple cards for that matter, but it loses to Nib guarantee. So a lot of people are not opting to play this, whereas if you want to deal with Appaloosa or DDD Wave Hacking Caesar, then you have to essentially have 2 cards to kind of break it if you want to use Nibiru. And that makes it so that some people are choosing to play Nibiru, some people are choosing to side Nibiru. That's kind of the rock, paper, scissors scenario. Right now, because I kind of want to experiment a little more and we are early into the format, I want to try out Desiree. And eventually, probably after banlist, Desiree might be the only option to go to. So my starting lineup here for my extra deck, I have Requiem, Sequence, Lacrima, and Desiree. I'm choosing the Desiree for now, but you could play Wave High King Caesar. You can also play M7 if you want to bridge your lines a little bit better, so you can quite easily just add back your own Fiend Smith into your hand and just generate an additional body. That's all up to you. I think it's just a little bit more experimental for me. There is one card I'm choosing not to play right now, which is Relinquish Anima. I think there's enough starters for me to actually generate 2 monsters that I'm not that much afraid of it, but I could regret not playing this if I do run into some like field spellcasters village, but those are the starting monsters. Moving on, of course, we're also going to need Beatrice, Moon of the Closed Heaven, and the additional monster we're trying out here is going to be Necro Princess. This is a card that I read. I had to message Konami, like, just confirm with me if the card works the way we think it does, where you can just use a Fiendsmith card that's equipped as the Fiend monster card. And based off of my judge knowledge, I think that is how it works, but this is something that you probably should ask head judge these cards. I think these are just part of the Fiendsmith package. Then for me to break out of my own fire lock, we've got Nightmare Phoenix, which I will attempt to co-link with Appaloosa. We have Hita the Charmer. I think that's just an extender. I think the rest of these cards are more or less self-explanatory. So these are the only cards to break out of the Promethean Princess Firelock. And we of course have IP Masquerena, we have SP, we have Selene. Selene helps us bridge into Access Code or Appaloosa for that matter. And finally, of course, we have the other two bosses. We have Access Code and also our Promethean Princess. So that's my current extra deck. I think I'm still kind of tweaking between, hey, do I want to play Wave Hiking Caesar? Because Wave Hiking has one advantage, which is you can actually make him very, very early. And even ending on it isn't actually all that bad, considering that the negation itself is, well, this card itself is not once per turn. But there are options that we can definitely test out right now. But that's essentially the extra deck.
Now, before we continue with the combo, we still have our sale live at MSTmerch.com. Okay, let's get into combos now, starting off with just the engraver line. So if you have engraver plus other cards in your hand, you get yourselves this particular option, which does not influence the other cards for the most part. You can activate engraver by throwing it into the graveyard, and you add yourself a Fiend Smith track. Activate the track from your hand, and you get to add to your hand a Lurie into your hand, and you're going to discard the Lurie. If Lurie is already in your hand, then add yourself Fiend Smith engraver, which also telegraphs you already have Lurie in your hand. And Lurie is going to activate. It's a mandatory effect, and now you get to special summon this card from your graveyard. Now perform a link summon with this card as a link one into Fiend Smith's Requiem. Activate Fiend Smith's Requiem and summon out, Fiend Smith engraver from the deck. Activate Fiend Smith engraver from the graveyard, putting back the Lurie into the deck, and that is your one graveyard summon per turn for the engraver. Now, if you have a really cracked hand where you can pretty much play around your opponent's hand traps for the most part, you can immediately just use this card and make a DDD High Wave King Caesar. Now you can slap Nibiru, and if you can play around with the rest of the hand traps, it's still a very safe board, not to mention that this does disrupt your opponent during their turn as well, so that's really, really rough for them. But that aside, if you don't want to make this particular play or you want to push it later on, then let's undo that, and instead we're going to perform a link summon into Fiend Smith's sequence. Activate sequence effect to perform a fusion using the monsters in your graveyard, and it's only graveyard. You get to put them back into the deck, recycle your resources, and you put back one of your Fiend Smith engravers to summon Lacrima. And Lacrima's effect, on fusion summon, you get to summon back one of your light fiend monsters in the graveyard. So you're going to summon back, well, of course, the Fiend Smith engraver. This gives you 4 link material, which gives you access to multiple things. If it's safer for you to go into Appaloosa, take all 4, make Appaloosa, and that's a-okay. So that's one of your options right here. The other option is going to be, of course, make a Beatrice with these two, and then dump your Snake Eye Ash. If you don't have any of the Snake Eye lines for you, then dump that into the graveyard and take the Beatrice and the sequence, these two together, and you can use those two to make a Promethean Princess, right? And so you can just revive the Ash and make your combo from there, which opens up, both particular engines in your deck. So that's another option. So these are like the options that we're going to lay it out here. In addition to that, of course, you can still go back into the, Wave Hiking Caesar because your opponent waited too long, which means this particular part of the board, like once you get to sequence, you've already summoned 5 times. It's nibbable, but you can manage it because this automatically threatens both types of negations against Nibiru, and you also get yourself a follow-up, and they definitely don't want you to get there, and that's also a very big part of this whole situation. In addition to that, you have one more option, which is you activate Tract, right? You activate Tract, you can fuse away 3 monsters, 1 engraver and 2 light fiend monsters, and that gives you the option to finally summon out, of course, your copy of Desiree. I do not recommend using the effect of Lacrima here to burn your opponent because you're going to lose your access to your Fiend Smith engraver. So you just don't access this unless you're getting close to time, then, deal the damage first and then talk later. And you can activate Sequence's effect to target the Desiree, making this card untargetable. Now you're going to be able to at least negate one of the infinite impermanences coming from your opponent. So just from that one particular play, you open yourself to these particular monsters right from the get-go. So that's what the Fiend Smith engraver offers as long as it's in your hand.
So essentially, one of the updates to the deck with the Necro Princess is that Tract now can work as a solo card. If you activate Tract effect, you can add the Lurie, dump the Lurie gets summoned onto the field. So if you normal summon out Lurie without Tract, then you can add this card back and you can generate even more bodies. But in this particular case, we go into Lurie. Lurie is going to be linked off into the Requiem effect. We're going to send that back to the graveyard, tributing it, summoning out the engraver, activate Requiem effect, equip to the engraver, and remember that this particular part can also be used to break your opponent's board by sending away the engraver. But in the case that there's nothing there, you can use both of these cards as fusion material for Necro Princess, And since you haven't used the Fiend Smith Engraver, you can use the Engraver effect to put back, say, the Lurie into the deck and summon out your Fiend Smith Engraver, which now generates, well, 2 monsters for you to play with, both of them level 6. You can overlay both of these into like DDD, Wave Hiking Caesar. A lot of people are going to M7, you know, Ptolemy M7. Because if you get Ptolemy M7, you can detach the Engraver and add it back to your hand, ditch it at the track. But that only really works if you started with just the Lurie, so it turns Lurie into a full combo. But in any case, since you still have 2 monsters here, you can overlay these into Beatrice. You can technically still climb into a Link 3. But if you go into Beatrice, you can use this to kind of dump your Fiendsmith card to kind of kick off your combo there. But the other case that you can do is that, just putting these cards aside, that you can link into the sequence and then use sequence's effect. You take 2 light monsters and you can perform a fusion into Lacrima. Yes, you don't get to revive anything, but you can also use these 2 monsters to climb into the Promethean Princess if this was happening later, where you already established the graveyard, for instance. If you can generate 1 additional body, on the other hand, you can climb maybe even further. But in any case, this is one way that you kind of, you know, move around in the combo. So a singular copy of Snake Eye Ash is a really devastating card. It can pivot into just pure Snake Eye and just not reveal any Fiendsmith card whatsoever, but I don't see why you would do that. Or you can just do some of the new lines. We can try it out right here. This is one that's a little bit more insulated, and if this is the only play you have in your 4-hand trap, you can try it out just to enable both engines. Start off with the normal summon of Snake Eye Ash. Ash effect, get Poplar. Poplar effect, reveal from your hand, summon it onto the field. Activate the effect of Poplar on summon, add Divine Temple to Snake Eye. Activate Divine Temple to Snake Eye and play Snake Eye's Diabell Star into your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. Then we're going to activate Ash's effect, get rid of our own temple. So summon 1, summon 2. And we're going to summon out the Oak. Oak effect, summon back the Ash. And then we're going to activate Oak effect, and we're going to get rid of our own Diabell Star to summon out our Flamberge Dragon, okay? So this way, even if we do get hit by Nib, and that is, I believe, summon number 5, they can hit us, but then we'll generate the token and the 2 monsters, and that lets us go into IP into Promethean Princess, and then we can still end on a pretty decent board. If you have 4 other cards, I mean, that's still pretty decent. But for the most part, now we take our 2 monsters here. We're going to link summon with them going into Moon of the Closed Heaven. Activate the effect of the Poplar that just got sent to grave. We're going to put the Snake Eyes Diabell Star back into the Small and Trap Zone. And now we're going to link away the Moon of the Closed Heaven into Fiendsmith's Requiem. Requiem effect, tribute, summon out Fiendsmith Engraver. So far, like, we can still pivot into Promethean Princess. And now we're going to activate Snake Eyes Diabell Star. We're going to put our Poplar into the back and summon out the Snake Eyes Diabell Star. That gives us 2 material. Lets us link this into Sequence. So we summon Sequence onto the field. Activate the effect of Sequence to perform a fusion using the monsters in the graveyard. We're going to put back the Requiem, and we're also going to put back Moon of the Closed Heaven. And this allows us to summon out Lacrima. Lacrima's effect, we're going to add back the Engraver that we summoned, and now we can activate Engraver from hand, sending it to the graveyard and adding Tract into our hand. Activate the Tract, add Lurie, and we're going to dump the Lurie into the graveyard. Lurie's effect is going to push the Lurie back onto the field, and with all these monsters, now we can perform ourselves a summon into Appaloosa. We're going to trigger the Lacrima to put back one of our cards. We're going to put back the Lurie into the deck, and that's going to burn your opponent. But we haven't actually summoned out Fiendsmith yet, so we're going to put back the Lacrima into the extra deck and summon out our Fiendsmith Engraver. With the 2 monsters, now we can link the Flamberge with the Engraver to summon our IP Masquerena. Now the Flamberge has been sent to the graveyard. We're going to activate it and summon back our Oak and our Ash, and we're going to just continue to link climb with that, going to Promethean Princess. Promethean Princess, summon back our Flamberge Dragon. Flamberge effect, put the IP in the back, and I'm just going to link away the Oak and the
Promethean Princess, we're a little bit fire locked, so we're just going to go into a Nightmare Phoenix so that this cannot be destroyed by battle. In any case, we still kind of ended on a full-esque board with just the one Ash. Is it more powerful than the other standard board? I think it's just very, very similar in general, but this one, at least you set up another engine with a follow-up, and it's actually not too bad. You can summon the Engraver by putting the sequence back, and if you go into sequence again, you start doing the same play, and you can put it back in your hand. It gets pretty nasty. You get to start cycling against your opponent. So this final combo, we're just gonna lab it out with Engraver, another 3-of, another 3-of, another 3-of, another 3-of. So this is what we have in our hand. Like, the reason why like the Fiend Smith are just so strong is just because the combos are so diverse, and it commits your opponent into like just throwing hand traps at you really early. Like without Droll, it's a very tough game. They need D-Shifter, Droll, something that just mainly is turn skip-esque card. Otherwise, they're gonna eat a board. So starting off with the Engraver, you can Ash this if you want because it telegraphs that they don't have Tracked in their hand. So they can go get Tracked, activate the Tracked, and grab Lurie. Lurie sent to the graveyard, and after that gets discarded, that also gets summoned up through the mandatory effect of Lurie. Lurie is now going to immediately be link summoned into Requiem. Requiem tribute effect, summon the Fiend Smith Engraver, and Engraver's graveyard effect, we're going to put back the Lurie back into the deck, which is why some people play 2 copies of Track so they can kind of dig it out again. Summon out the Engraver. This is summon number 4, so there's not much you can do in terms of like nib access. You can just go into DDD if you want to play like that and you want to play it safe, and you have the disruptions for the imperms. That's totally fine. But in any case, we're going to be a little bit greedy going to sequence. They have to basically nib you somewhere here or imperm the sequence, but if you imperm the sequence, you have a link 2 to start your plays with. It kind of lets you pivot pretty well into the Promethean Princess. So that being said, we're going to activate the sequence effect. We're going to shuffle back 2 of the Fiend Smith or Light Fiend monsters into the decks, and that's going to summon out our Lacrima. Lacrima effect, summon the Engraver back from the graveyard. This is the point where they have to nib, and if they don't have it, then they're kind of screwed for the most part. Unless they have nib plus another hand trap and they really want to greed it out, that is, you know, their option. Because if they have double hand trap, they can definitely do so. I mean, if they have double hand trap anyway, they're just got to be super, super patient and hope that your end board is going to be something that they can handle. But in any case, you can take all of these. I'm going to choose to go for Tracked plays because I just like the negation. Seeing that I didn't get nib here, I don't think there is going to be a nib. And that's kind of my logic for now, unless they got double hand trap. But if they have double hand trap and you pair yourself with the other hand trap, then you should be okay for the most part. But if you want to play it safe, go for the DDD. DDD plus like a cross out, you're going to be super safe from 90% of issues. So from here, we're going to activate the sequence, the equip. We're not using Lacrima because I want to leave this in the graveyard so I can summon out like the next turn in case the board does get broken. Otherwise, if you're going into time, burn your opponent. And now we can begin our normal play. Normal summon out Ash. Ash effect. Get Poplar. Poplar. Reveal. Summon. Poplar effect. Get the Divine Temple. Divine Temple activate. We're going to place to the back row Snake Eyes Diabell Star. And I think for this particular board, I am going to activate Snake Eyes Ash on the Diabell Star, and I'm going to go into Oak. If I didn't have Diabell Star the Black Witch, 100% I'll go for Oak first. If I do have it, I can just play the Diabell Star later on and immediately just go for Flamberge here. But if I didn't have this, then I would go for Oak. Say I'm gonna pretend I don't have this because this just lets me extend through a hand trap for the moment, and I would just kind of want to pretend I don't have it. Go for Oak. Oak summons back the Ash, and then Oak effect. We're just gonna get rid of our field spell for that matter. Actually, we don't need to get rid of the field spell just yet. I think. No, we should get rid of the field spell. We get rid of the field spell now. So now that line has been established, let's go with normal summon of Snake Eye Ash. Ash effect, we're gonna add Poplar. Poplar effect, reveal summon itself. Add the Divine Temple. Divine Temple, activate, place Snake Eyes Diabell Star. If I didn't have the Diabell Star the Black Witch, I would probably go into Oak at this point, just so that I can throw an extra name into the graveyard, which is kind of what I'm gonna try to do here. I'm gonna go activate the Ash, the Diabell Star, and that's gonna summon out the Oak. Oak effect, summon back the Ash Oak effect with the Ash. Now we're gonna put the Flamberge, and now we can link these two together. There's a reason why I did that, okay? Might not be the most optimal line right now, but if I didn't have the Diabell Star, then I would do this just so that I would have the extra name in the graveyard for Flamberge when I finish the turn. So this is what it would look like. So I go into the IP Masquerena. The Poplar effect is going to put back the Diabell Star, and the Flamberge will summon back just 2 of the names here. Let's just go with these 2. All right, the Oak and the Ash. Next, we're just gonna start climbing up. We we link summon into the Promethean Princess. Promethean Princess summons back the Flamberge. Okay. And now we're gonna activate Flamberge, put the IP Masquerena. And we have spellcasters available, but regardless, let's perform a link summon into our first spellcaster. That's going to be our Hita. We're gonna activate Diabell Star. We're gonna summon this, and we're gonna put Poplar into the back. And then we're gonna take these 2, continue to summon into our Selene. Selene gets 4 at least. And Selene effect, summon Diabell Star, and proceed to a link summon one more time into our Apo, which ends our board with something like this. We have an Omni Negate, which would have been like the Hope Harbinger-esque type play, but this is now a little bit better because it hits more than just Hope Harbinger. And then there is the Flamberge with IP, the Appaloosa, plus we have, of course, the Promethean Princess in the graveyard, and we have our names in the graveyard as well. If we want to keep pushing, we definitely can, but we also have like hand traps as well as the Imperm. It's just kind of the same stuff, really. And I think it can get even nastier if you do choose to go for like the DDD, because now you commit less material. You can probably end on more stuff, but the extra deck is just so tight. This is what I'm demoing so far, but I think you guys can definitely lab out even more combos, and I think a whole video could just be dedicated to strictly just comboing with this deck. That's all I got for this video. Think of this video as a starting point to learn some of the basic combos of how things can work individually, how they can work together. I think the skill ceiling of this deck is ridiculously powerful and does push it really, really high. Is this deck better than regular Snake Eye, however? I don't know. I think the end boards are a lot nastier, and the ways that they can push is a lot stronger, because don't forget, we haven't even looked at board breaking with like the Fiendsmith package, where you can use the Fiendsmith just to equip and then send away one of the problematic cards. And if you don't answer it properly, you might leave them with additional monster before they start their play, and that could be enough to crack everything. I think using this video just as a starting point and then just lab it out, because I think there's just a lot more to discover within the TCG side. So make sure you guys hit that like button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell. If you guys got cool stuff to show, leave it down in the comments section, and I'll see you all in the next one.